You all wanted to humiliate me. You planned it, rehearsed it, smiled about it. You only humiliated yourselves.
Look at her, dressed like a beggar. My son really knows how to pick trash. His mother sneered, loud enough for the whole room to hear. Her husband laughed along, proud of the insult. That's all she's worth. Let her stay in her place. They thought she was broke. They thought she was desperate. They thought she had nothing, and that made her the perfect target for their mockery. At every visit, they gave her leftovers. At every gathering, they whispered behind her back. And when she finally married into their home, the humiliation only grew sharper, louder, crueler. But she stayed silent. She watched and she played the role they expected, the poor, helpless woman who should feel lucky just to be in their presence. Until the day he tried to humiliate her publicly, in front of friends, family, and business partners. That was the moment she stopped acting. And what happened next silenced every voice in the room. Sometimes the greatest power is the one you pretend you don't have. And sometimes the people who laugh the loudest are the first to fall to their knees when the truth appears. Hello family, welcome back. Before we begin, I have a small but heartfelt request. Please, subscribe. Your support is what keeps these stories alive. Every time you click that button, you're helping us share voices that would otherwise be forgotten and stories that deserve to be heard. And in the comments, tell us where you're watching from, because together we are not just telling stories, we are keeping hope alive. Emily knew the moment she stepped out of Michael's car that his family already hated her. She felt it in the way the mansion doors opened before Michael even rang the bell, as if someone inside had been waiting just to judge the exact second she crossed the threshold. Judith stood there, perfect posture, sharp stare, not a smile anywhere. Michael walked in first. He didn't offer Emily a hand or a glance. She followed him quietly, the way she always did when they were around people he wanted to impress. Judith looked her up and down, not subtly, not politely, slowly, like she was inspecting a stain on her floor. "You must be Emily," she said, each word clipped. "You came dressed comfortably." Emily didn't react. She wore jeans that cost more than Judith's shoes, but no one needed to know that. To Judith, she looked simple. That was the point. "Hi, Mrs. Rhodes. Thank you for having me," Emily said. Judith didn't bother responding. She just turned and walked deeper into the house. Michael followed her. Emily kept pace behind him, listening to the sound of their footsteps, hitting expensive marble. The house was huge, loud with quiet. Every echo reminded her of the world she was pretending not to be from. Michael didn't touch her, didn't check on her, didn't even slow down to make sure she wasn't lost. In the car, he had been charming, sweet, warm. The moment they reached his property line, he turned into someone else entirely. That switch was becoming familiar. They reached the sitting room, where Rachel waited. Michael's sister smiled like she'd been rehearsing it. She reached out as if to hug Emily, then grabbed her arms instead. "You made it," Rachel said brightly. "I told Mom you wouldn't cancel. I know how hard-working women are. You push through anything." Emily smiled. She knew exactly what that meant. Rachel didn't say busy. She said hard-working, a word that rich people use when they want you to remember you're below them. "Thanks for the invite," Emily said. Rachel's eyes flicked down her clothes. "You're so brave. Most people dress up too much for our home. But you're relaxed. It's refreshing." Judith snorted, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Michael, sit." "Emily, anywhere is fine." Emily sat down on the edge of the couch. She kept her back straight, her hands calm. She remembered her old etiquette teacher's voice. "Power is quiet. Power doesn't fidget." Michael loosened up only when he turned toward his mother. "So, Mom, dinner ready? I'm starving." Judith gave him an affectionate smile she never gave anyone else. Of course, the chef prepared something special. Emily watched them, mother and son, perfect in their own eyes, sharp everywhere else. Rachel sat beside her. "You must be overwhelmed," she whispered. "Not everyone is used to houses this large." Emily didn't correct her, didn't say she grew up in something bigger, didn't say her childhood home had a private elevator and a ballroom. She just nodded. A server passed nearby with a tray. Judith snapped her fingers. "Stop. Emily wants water. Give her one." Emily hadn't said a word. The server stopped in front of her, too afraid to look anywhere except the floor. Emily took the glass and smiled at him gently. "Thank you." The man blinked, as if he wasn't used to kindness in this house. Judith saw the interaction and frowned at Emily like she'd done something improper. Michael finally acknowledged her existence. "Babe, relax. You don't have to talk to the staff." Emily's jaw tightened, but her expression stayed soft. Rachel leaned closer. "Don't mind him. He's always like this. You'll get used to it." Emily didn't want to, but she didn't say that either. She just watched, learned, filed every moment away. Michael wanted a quiet, grateful woman by his side, one who would bow her head and thank him for choosing her. Judith wanted someone to control. Rachel wanted someone to feel superior to. They all thought they had found exactly what they wanted. Dinner was announced soon after. Judith walked ahead. Michael walked with her. Rachel trailed. Behind them, Emily walked alone at the end of the line. Judith didn't look back to see if she was following. At the table, Judith pointed to the farthest seat. "Emily, you can sit down there." The place at the opposite end of the table, where guests no one cared about sat. Emily walked to it without hesitation. She didn't need the head of the table to own the room. Judith launched into stories about vacations Emily couldn't pretend to relate to. Michael bragged about deals Emily already knew were shaky. Rachel talked about charity events she didn't care about. They didn't ask Emily a single thing about herself. Not one question. The entire meal, Emily played the part. The quiet, grateful outsider. The girl who grew up sharing a bedroom. The girl who should be honored to sit under their chandelier. It would have been convincing, too, if Judith weren't so determined to expose her. Halfway through the meal, Judith spoke loudly enough to cut everyone's conversation. "So, Emily, Michael told us you grew up modestly. Where exactly?" Emily kept her tone steady. "Ohio." Judith waited for more. Emily offered nothing. Rachel smiled like she knew a secret. "Ohio is sweet. I knew a girl from there once. She used to tell us stories about how her family saved coupons to afford dinner out." Michael laughed. "That's probably accurate for Emily's childhood." Emily swallowed her food. Slowly, calmly. Judith tilted her head. "Don't be embarrassed. We accept everyone here, even people from humble backgrounds. It must be interesting to be in a home like this. Everything must feel new." "Not really," Emily said. Judith raised an eyebrow. Michael shot her a warning look Emily didn't miss. His eyes said, "Stay in your place." So Emily added, "But I'm grateful for the invitation." Michael relaxed again. Judith smirked. Rachel spoke with forced enthusiasm. "Actually, Emily, I'm hosting a small family dinner tomorrow. Nothing fancy, just close relatives and friends. You should come." Emily nodded. "Of course." Rachel squeezed her arm. "Perfect." But her smile didn't touch her eyes. Emily knew a trap when she saw one. After dinner, everyone drifted back to the sitting room. Judith picked up her phone to scroll through messages she pretended were important. Michael talked to his sister about business, deals that had nothing to do with either of them. Rachel whispered to Judith occasionally, glancing back at Emily. Emily stayed quiet. She wanted them to think she was slow. She wanted them to think she was overwhelmed. She wanted them to believe her silence meant weakness. It was easier to dismantle people who underestimated her. Michael walked over at last. "You good?" It wasn't concern. It was obligation. Emily nodded. "Fine. You sure? My family's a lot." "They are." He laughed. "Don't worry. They'll warm up to you once they realize you're grateful." Emily felt something sharp tug inside her chest, but she held it down. "I am," she said. Michael kissed her cheek like she was a trophy he was polishing. Then he walked back to his family, leaving her standing alone. Emily didn't mind solitude. She needed the space to think. Every moment tonight was confirmation. His family wasn't just mean. They were conditioning her, testing boundaries, seeing how much humiliation she'd swallow before she pushed back. They didn't know she had a high tolerance for cruelty when she had a plan. And she did. She always did. Hours passed before Rachel announced she had to prepare for tomorrow. Judith said she needed to rest. Michael agreed that the night should end. It was almost impressive how easily they dismissed Emily, as if she were a visiting stranger. Michael walked her to the door, not all the way outside, just to the foyer. He touched her chin lightly. "Try harder tomorrow," he said. "They'll respect you more if you stay humble." Emily felt something inside her shift. Tiny crack, but she didn't show it. She just nodded. "Good night," he said, then turned to walk back toward his mother's voice. Emily stepped outside. The cold air felt good on her skin. She didn't drive. She said her car was old and unreliable. Michael offered to get her a new one once they were married. She pretended to be grateful, so she called for a rideshare, standing at the edge of the perfect circular driveway, letting the wind hit her face. She didn't look back at the mansion. She didn't need to. She could still feel Judith's stare in the way the sky seemed to judge her. When her ride arrived, she got in and kept her eyes on the road ahead, not the house behind her. She spent the ride home reviewing every word, every gesture, every test. She had walked into a den of people who thought money bought power. That cruelty proved strength. That humility meant weakness. People like that were predictable, and predictable people were easy to destroy. The next evening, she arrived at Rachel's family dinner exactly on time. Not early, not late, perfectly neutral. Rachel answered the door wearing a bright smile that didn't match the tension behind her eyes. "You came," she said, pulling Emily inside with a little too much excitement. Emily gave a warm smile. "Of course." The dining room was already full. Judith sat at the head of the table. Michael sat beside her. Aunts, uncles, cousins, and partners filled the rest of the seats. Every face turned toward Emily the moment she entered. Rachel placed a hand on Emily's back and guided her forward, almost shoving her into the spotlight. "Everyone, this is Emily," she announced. She insisted we save the leftovers for her. The room went silent. Emily froze mid-step. She looked at Rachel. Rachel smiled wide, as if she'd paid her a compliment. Judith clicked her tongue in disappointment. Michael chuckled like he expected this from her. Emily didn't defend herself, didn't correct the lie, didn't confront Rachel. She just lowered her gaze, exactly the way they expected. Inside, her heart hardened a little more, and she smiled to herself. Let them think she begged for leftovers. It would make what came later hit even harder. The room stayed quiet for a moment after Rachel's announcement, like everyone was deciding whether to laugh or look offended on Judith's behalf. Then Judith lifted her chin and gave a dry, tight smile. "Well, that is thrifty of her," Judith said. "Nothing wrong with saving food when you're used to it." A few relatives chuckled. Michael didn't look at Emily at all. He was busy scrolling through something on his phone, pretending not to hear the snickers. Emily kept her head lowered. She held the roll tight, like armor she refused to drop. Rachel guided her toward the last seat at the table again. Sit, Emily. We already ate, but I'm sure you don't mind warming up whatever's left. Emily sat. The chair scraped loudly against the floor. A few eyes flicked toward her, waiting to see embarrassment, waiting for a reaction they could pin on her. She didn't give it to them. A server came by with a tray of dishes. Leftovers, cold, unseasoned, placed in front of her like a performance. Rachel smiled at Emily across the table, then whispered to the cousin next to her. They both laughed. Emily caught the words, poor thing, slipping between their lips. Emily lifted her fork. Slowly, calmly. She acted like she didn't hear anything. Her silence was deliberate, steady, the kind that made some people bold and others nervous. Judith chose bold. Emily, she said loudly, do you like the food? Yes, Emily answered quietly. I doubt you get meals like this often, Judith said. But don't worry. Michael will make sure you never go hungry again. Someone giggled behind a napkin. Michael didn't defend her. He didn't even look embarrassed. He just reached for the wine bottle and poured himself more, humming like the night was normal. Rachel leaned forward, elbows on the table. Emily, tell everyone what you do for work again? Emily kept her voice even. Receptionist. Rachel tilted her head. Right? With long hours, right? Must be exhausting. I don't know how. People do it. Emily didn't answer. She didn't need to. Rachel was performing for the table. One uncle chimed in. Michael, you sure about this one? She'll have trouble fitting in. Michael smirked. Relax. I know what I'm doing. Judith added. He's always had a soft spot for charity. The table roared with laughter. Emily stayed still. She didn't blink. She didn't grip her fork tighter. She felt everything in her chest, but nothing reached her face. The moment dinner ended, Rachel stood quickly. Dessert in the other room, she said. Come along. Emily rose, but Judith blocked her path with a gentle tap on her arm. You shouldn't feel ashamed, Judith said with a fake kindness that stung worse than cruelty. Just know your place and you'll be fine. My place? Emily asked softly, lifting her eyes. Judith smiled. Yes, behind Michael. Quiet, helpful, humble. A man like him needs a woman who doesn't make things complicated. Michael approached just in time to hear the end. Mom's right, he said easily. Don't stress. Just keep being grateful. There it was again. The bruising expectation. The command disguised as advice. Emily nodded once. I understand. And she did. Just not in the way they thought. Dessert was short. A few more jabs thrown in her direction. A few more laughs behind cups. Rachel made a snide comment about Emily's shoes. Judith asked if Emily's apartment had heating. Michael joked that he might upgrade his charity project soon. Every word was recorded in Emily's mind. Filed. Saved. By the time she left the mansion, she was drowning in silence. But it wasn't weakness. It was strategy. She had spent years learning how to let people talk themselves into corners. She took another rideshare home. The driver kept glancing at her through the mirror like he wanted to ask if she was okay. But Emily stared out the window the whole time, focused, calculating each small detail she'd witnessed. Humiliation wasn't the worst thing in the world. Being underestimated was worse, but also more useful. When she got home, she changed into comfortable clothes and sat on her couch. No TV, no phone, no music, just the soft hum of the refrigerator and the calm she needed to think clearly. In wealthy circles, silence was dangerous. People always assumed it meant ignorance. They never suspected it could be a weapon. She wasn't planning revenge. Not yet. That part came later. First, she had to let them think they were winning. The next week passed with Michael bouncing between sweet and dismissive. Flowers one day, cold silence the next, compliments in private, criticism in public. He didn't see the shift in Emily's eyes each time he did it. He didn't see the way she paid attention to what he valued, what he feared, what he hid. He thought she was just grateful to be with a man like him. He never asked why a poor receptionist was so composed, why she didn't cry, why she didn't try to fight back or please his family harder. He just assumed she was weak. Saturday night came quickly. They were supposed to have dinner at a restaurant downtown, with some of Michael's friends. Emily agreed to go. Michael picked her up, irritation already buried in his tone. Try not to be awkward tonight. They're not used to people like you. People like me, she repeated. He kissed her cheek, missing her expression entirely. Don't take it personal. Just be quiet. She nodded. Sure. The dinner was loud and full of people who thought money excused anything. Michael told jokes about Emily's frugal lifestyle, exaggerating things he barely knew. Everyone laughed. Emily smiled politely, pretending she didn't hear the sharpness under each comment. At one point Michael said, Emily told me she's never owned a real leather bag. Can you believe that? His friends burst out laughing. Emily felt the heat in her chest, but she pushed it down. She lifted her glass and took a sip. People like them laughed because they felt safe, because they believed no truth could ever hit them where it hurt. Let them laugh, Emily thought. Keep laughing while you can. When the night ended, Michael drove her home and kissed her forehead like he was rewarding her for good behavior. See? You did great, he said. She only smiled. The days rolled on until the mention of the engagement party came up. Michael brought it up, casually, as if it were nothing. Mom wants to host it here. Small event. Just close friends and some business partners. Emily nodded, pretending the idea didn't make her skin tighten. Michael continued, Don't worry about your outfit. Mom said she'll pick something appropriate for you. Appropriate. Code for something that looks cheap enough to fit the story they created. Emily asked softly, Do I get to choose anything? Michael shrugged. Don't overcomplicate things. He kissed her cheek again and left for work. That night, Emily's apartment stayed dark except for the small lamp beside the couch. She sat there again, letting her mind organize everything like puzzle pieces. She wasn't angry. Not yet. Anger clouded strategy. She needed clarity. She needed patience. And she had both. The next morning, Michael asked her to join him at his parents' house to finalize engagement. Details. Emily agreed without question. When they arrived, the house was busy. Judith's voice echoed through the hall as she scolded servers about flower arrangements. Rachel rushed around, pretending to be helpful. Emily stayed silent and out of the way, watching them run around like they owned the world. Michael wandered off to the study, bored. Emily followed him, thinking they were going to talk more about the event. But the moment she reached the door, she stopped. Voices filtered through the cracked doorway. Michael's voice. Judith's voice. Emily stepped quietly to the side, out of view. She didn't breathe, didn't blink. Michael laughed. Relax, Mom. She won't suspect anything. She's too busy trying to impress us. Judith's voice sharpened. Just make sure she plays her part. A poor girl like that. She should be grateful you're even marrying her. I know, Michael said. That's why the engagement party is perfect. I'll make the announcement funny. People love that stuff. Emily felt something cold slide through her chest. Judith asked, What exactly are you planning to say? Michael grinned through his words. I'll tell everyone she's my charity case. That I lifted her out of the gutter. They'll laugh. She won't fight it. She never does. Judith laughed with him. Good. She needs to understand her place before the wedding. Do it. Publicly. It'll stick better. Emily's heartbeat slowed. Not fast. Slow. Controlled. A silence followed inside the room. Then Judith said, "Just don't make her cry too much. Tears make people uncomfortable." Michael shrugged. "She'll get over it." Emily closed her eyes. When she opened them again, they were calm, quiet, sharp. She stepped back, turned, and walked down the hall with steady steps. She whispered, barely audible, "Let them." And with that, the mask she wore stopped being protection. It became her weapon. If you haven't subscribed yet, we'd love for you to join our community by hitting the subscribe button. Through our stories, we build hope and give a future to children and women who have been abused all over the world. Motivate us by subscribing and turning on your notification bell so you never miss a story that matters. Also, let us know in the comments, where are you watching from, and how did this story speak to you? Michael's shift started the morning after Emily overheard him and Judith laughing about publicly humiliating her. He didn't know she'd heard a thing. He moved around her kitchen like always, taking the last of her coffee without asking, humming to himself as he scrolled through messages. He seemed lighter, almost relieved, like a man who believed everything in his life was lined up perfectly. The obedient fiancée, the approving mother, the upcoming party where he'd get to perform his little joke at her expense. Emily watched him quietly from the table. "You're staring," he said, grinning. "Just thinking," she answered. "About what? How busy you've been." He shrugged. "Work's insane. Might be home late tonight too." There it was. The open door. The excuse he planned to use for the next few months, maybe years, depending on how long he thought she'd swallow it. Emily nodded. "I understand." He kissed the top of her head like she was a child. "Good girl." She smiled. The kind of smile that meant nothing on the surface. The kind that made men like him comfortable. He left soon after, calling out as he walked to his car, "Keep your phone on. Mom wants to handle the prenup today." Emily didn't answer. She waited until she heard his engine fade down the street, then leaned back in her chair and let the quiet settle like dust around her. The prenup, the humiliation to come, the affair she hadn't confronted yet. It was all building, layer by layer, like a storm waiting for the right moment to strike. She didn't rush it. She didn't rush anything. By noon, Judith sent a text full of clipped instructions, times, and an address to her attorney's office. Emily put on her simple clothes, tied her hair back the same way she always did, and took a bus instead of a rideshare. Judith wanted her to look poor. Emily was happy to play the part. The law office was at the top of a glass tower that reflected sunlight so sharply it made her eyes water. Judith was already in the lobby, sitting in a stiff chair that looked too expensive to be comfortable. Rachel sat beside her, tapping on her phone. Judith looked at Emily's bus pass in her hand, then at her shoes. "You didn't have anyone drop you off?" "No," Emily said. Rachel let out a quiet snort. Judith rose slowly. "Let's get this over with." Inside the conference room, the attorney placed a stack of papers on the table. Thick, heavy, purposely overwhelming. "This is standard," Judith said, sliding the papers toward Emily. "Nothing surprising, just protects Michael's assets and ensures there aren't complications." Rachel added, "You'll be fine. Just sign where he marked." Emily flipped through the pages without expression. If she were the woman they believed her to be, she might have cried, or asked questions, or panicked. Instead, she reached for the pen. Judith frowned. "You're not going to read it?" Emily gave a soft smile. "I trust Michael." Judith blinked, thrown off. Rachel stared at her like she was stupid. Emily didn't look at either of them. She signed each page cleanly, neatly, without hesitation. When she pushed the stack back toward the attorney, Judith's lips tightened with confusion, almost disappointment. You don't have any questions? Judith asked again. No, Emily said. Judith studied her face, hard, searching for something. You understand what you signed? Yes. And you're still not concerned? Should I be? Rachel shifted uneasily. Judith didn't answer. For the first time since Emily met her, she looked unsure of herself. The attorney gathered the papers. Judith and Rachel stepped into the hall to speak in low, tense voices. Emily couldn't hear the words, but she understood the tone. They expected fear. They expected resistance. They expected her to cling. Her calm was the first crack in their confidence. Good, she thought. Let the cracks spread. When they finished whispering, Judith led her to the elevator. Michael will be pleased, she said. Emily gave the same gentle smile she'd been using for weeks. I just want him to be happy. Judith nodded, but something in her eyes had changed. Suspicion, mild but growing. They reached the lobby. Rachel pulled Emily aside before they exited the tower. You know, Rachel said quietly, people talk, and some stories about you are interesting. Emily kept her expression blank. Stories. Rachel's tone sharpened. Your past, where you grew up, who your family is, things that don't match up. Emily cocked her head slightly. Like what? Rachel hesitated. The confidence left her eyes for a moment. I don't know yet, but I will. Emily almost smiled. If you say so. Rachel flipped her hair and walked off in a rush, annoyed that she couldn't shake Emily the way she wanted to. Emily stayed standing there for a moment, letting the breeze from the open glass doors cool her face. Rachel's words weren't a threat. They were a confession. Someone inside the family was digging through her life, and someone inside the family was telling Rachel the wrong version of it. The thought stayed with Emily the entire way home. Later that night, Michael didn't come over. He texted an excuse about late hours again. Emily didn't react. She set her phone aside and made tea, letting the steam rise toward the kitchen. She expected nothing from him, and that made everything clearer. The next morning, she woke up alone and found a message from Judith. The Rhodes family wanted another private gathering, another test, another chance to slice her pride and call it manners. Emily arrived at the mansion to find the living room arranged like a boardroom. Chairs lined up, in a circle, family members waiting, some awkward, some eager, some clearly excited for whatever theatrics were planned. Michael stood in the center like a host. Emily entered quietly. She didn't greet anyone. She waited. Judith cleared her throat. We wanted to have a discussion about suitability. One aunt chimed in. Marriage is serious. We all have a responsibility to Michael. A cousin added. He needs someone who matches his life. Rachel crossed her arms. And someone whose background isn't questionable. Emily didn't blink. She didn't shrink. She sat in the only empty chair, her posture steady. Michael nodded toward the group. So, let's talk. Is Emily the right fit for this family? It hit her like a slap. Not because she cared about their approval, but because he asked it. Publicly, proudly, like he was running a business meeting. Judith spoke first. She is quiet. That's good. But she lacks refinement. Someone else said, she has no money of her own. Another, she doesn't understand high society. Rachel added, and I've heard things about her past. Inconsistent things. Judith looked directly at Emily. Say something. Emily looked around the room. Their stares felt like needles, but none pierced her. What would you like me to say? She asked. Judith frowned. Defend yourself. Emily shook her head. No, you already made up your minds. Michael raised a brow. He didn't like that answer. He wanted her defensive. He wanted her desperate. The room quieted. Judith pressed. Are you giving up? No, Emily said. Just listening. Her tone was calm. Too calm. It unsettled Judith again, though she hid it behind a cold stare. The vote went how Emily expected. Most said she wasn't ready. A few said she could try harder. One uncle said she didn't belong. Judith delivered the final line. Emily, if you want this family, you need to prove yourself. Emily folded her hands neatly in her lap. Okay. Michael blinked at her soft acceptance. Thrown off. He expected tears, anger, pleading. He didn't understand that accepting humiliation wasn't the same as being humiliated. After the vote, everyone drifted out of the room. Some avoided her eyes. Others smirked. Rachel brushed past her with a little shoulder bump, a silent reminder that she enjoyed every second of this. Emily didn't move. She stayed seated until the room emptied, then rose slowly and walked down the hall. The house felt bigger than usual, loud with distant voices and footsteps. She stopped in front of the tall windows overlooking the back lawn, letting the sunlight cut across her face. Not a single part of her hurt, but every part of her remembered. Judith suddenly appeared beside her. You handled that well, she said. Almost too well. Emily turned to face her. Thank you. That wasn't a compliment. Emily nodded once. Still soft. Still silent. Judith narrowed her eyes. Remember your place. I do. Good. Judith walked away quickly, as if she were escaping something she didn't want to admit she felt. Discomfort. Emily stood alone again. Later that night, after the vote and the stares and the false smiles, Emily returned to her apartment. She put her things away slowly, one by one, letting the scenes replay in her mind. Like a movie she needed to memorize. Michael texted again. Working late. She typed back, okay. Then she set her phone down, walked to the table, and opened her laptop. She logged into their shared bank app. Michael gave her access weeks ago, telling her to familiarize herself with real finances. She changed the password. Nothing dramatic. Nothing traceable to her. Just small adjustments, subtle enough that Michael would think he made a mistake. She logged out, closed the laptop. Then she brewed another cup of tea. On the surface, Emily looked like a woman who accepted her place. A woman who obeyed the family. A woman who didn't fight back. But the stillness inside her had teeth. She heard her phone buzz. Michael again. Baby, can you check something in the bank app for me? She smiled. She typed, sure. She opened the app. Entered the wrong password on purpose. Twice. It's not working, she typed. Michael replied instantly. What? You must be doing it wrong. Again. She tried a third incorrect attempt. Still locked, she wrote. Michael sent a long string of annoyed messages. God, Emily, pay attention. I don't have time for this. I'll handle it later. She replied, sorry. He didn't respond again. She didn't need him to. She had given him exactly what he wanted to believe. A quiet fiancé who couldn't even work an app properly. And that belief was going to cost him later. For now, she leaned back on her couch, holding her warm cup between her palms. Her world was cracking, shifting, opening in dangerous ways. But she didn't fear the cracks. She welcomed them, because cracks meant something underneath was about to be revealed. Michael didn't come home the next night. He sent a rush text around midnight. Still at work. Don't wait up. Emily stared at the message for a long moment, then placed her phone face down on the table. She didn't need proof to know what was happening. She had seen the shift in his touch, the way he hid the screen every time a notification popped up, the new cologne he didn't wear around her. But she didn't chase answers. She didn't ask questions. She let the truth come to her. And it did. The next afternoon, Emily went to Michael's place to drop off a file he forgot for a meeting. When she stepped inside, the living room was clean, quiet, and untouched. But the air felt wrong. Too warm, too scented. She walked toward the kitchen and stopped when she heard a soft beep. A phone screen lit up on the counter. Michael's. He must have left it behind in his rush. She didn't mean to look, but the screen glowed bright, and her eyes flicked over it before she could stop herself. A text preview sat right at the top. Miss you already. Last night was perfect. Same time tonight. Emily didn't blink. Her heart didn't slam. Her breath didn't catch. She just stared. The name wasn't saved. Just a phone number. But the rhythm of the message, the confidence, the kind of familiarity Michael never gave her, told her everything. She set the file down, stepped back quietly, and turned to leave. She wasn't going to confront him. If she did, he'd deny it, twist it, blame her for invading his privacy. Better to let him think she knew nothing. Better to let him bury himself. She returned home and stayed quiet the rest of the day. She cooked a simple dinner. She sat on her couch and watched the shadows stretch across the floor. She didn't tell Michael she stopped by. She didn't mention the message. She waited. That night, he came home smelling like hotel soap and someone else's perfume. He didn't know. He carried it with him. He didn't know she noticed. He kissed her forehead. Sorry I was late. She nodded. Work must be stressful. Yeah, he said. You have no idea. Emily let him walk past her. Let him believe she was soft and blind. But her stomach tightened when he went into the bedroom and closed the door behind him to make a call. The walls in her apartment were thin. She didn't move. She listened. Hey, he whispered, his voice low, but not low enough. Yeah, I got home. No, she's not. Suspicious. She never is. Emily closed her eyes. A pause. Michael laughed softly. Don't be dramatic. You know I'm not leaving you. I just need her to play nice with the family until after the engagement party. Then I'll figure things out. Another pause. Stop worrying. She won't find out. Emily heard the rustle of sheets. The sound of him settling onto the bed he shared with her, while speaking softly to another woman. She didn't get up. She didn't interrupt. She didn't even cry. She stood still, every breath slow, controlled, deliberate. When the call ended, Michael walked out of the room, smiling like nothing was wrong. You, going to bed soon? In a bit, Emily said. He kissed her forehead again and went back to the bedroom. She stood in the kitchen long after he fell asleep. The refrigerator hummed. The clock ticked. The night settled around her like fog. Then she opened the drawer where Michael kept backup keys, chargers, and an old notebook. Under all of it, she found the bank statements he forgot to hide. He had opened a new credit card. He had spent money at hotels. He had taken someone to expensive dinners he never offered her. She didn't get angry. She didn't even sigh. She just closed the drawer and sat back down at the table. Michael wasn't just unfaithful. He was sloppy. And sloppy people were easy to unravel. The next day, Judith requested her presence. Emily arrived at the mansion to find yet another choreographed meeting. Judith, Rachel, two aunts, and Michael's grandmother sat in the living room like they were preparing for a debate. Judith didn't waste time. We need to finalize guest lists for the gala. Only important people attend this event, which means you must learn how to behave. Rachel chimed in. And how to present yourself. Emily nodded politely. Of course. Michael wasn't there. He claimed he was at work, but Judith didn't question it. Emily wondered if Judith even cared what her son was doing when her attention was focused on control. The meeting stretched on for an hour. Judith criticized Emily's posture. Rachel corrected her. Table manners. An aunt suggested she take speech lessons. The grandmother said Emily's voice was too soft for a woman joining the Rhodes family. Emily nodded through all of it. Every correction made her smaller in their eyes, and every moment she stayed small made them more confident, more careless. Judith ended the meeting with a firm, dismissive pat on Emily's arm. Just try to keep up. If you embarrass Michael, you embarrass us. I understand, Emily said. On her way out, she passed by Rachel, who was whispering to someone on the phone. No, I'm telling you, Rachel hissed. Her story doesn't add up. She says she grew up in Ohio, but the details don't match anything online. I swear something's off about her. Emily paused, quiet, invisible, listening. Rachel didn't notice her. I don't know yet, Rachel continued, but I'm going to find out who she really is. Emily turned and kept walking. She didn't rush. She didn't look worried. But her mind sharpened, because Rachel was digging, because someone in the family was feeding Rachel pieces of information, because someone else might be watching her with a different motive entirely. When Emily reached home, she took off her shoes and sat on the edge of the bed. She checked her email, her messages, her accounts. No threats, no clues, no signs of a storm besides the ones quietly brewing in her own home. Then her phone buzzed. A text. Unknown number. She stared at the screen before opening it. The message was short. He's planning to humiliate you at the gala. Don't react. Their secrets are uglier than yours. Emily didn't move. Her pulse didn't speed up. Her breath didn't shake. She just read it again. Someone in the Rhodes family was secretly watching her. Someone knew what Michael was planning. Someone wanted her calm, and someone was warning her, for reasons she didn't yet understand. She lifted her eyes from the screen. The room felt colder, the silence sharper. Someone inside that house was on her side, and that was far more dangerous than any enemy. The morning of the gala felt wrong from the moment Emily opened her eyes. The air was still. The city outside seemed quieter than usual, and every thought in her mind carried a strange heaviness, like something was pressing down on her chest. Michael had already left. She found a note on the counter. Busy with preparations. Don't be late. And wear the dress Mom picked. No greeting. No warmth. Just instructions. The dress Judith chose hung over a kitchen chair. Beige. Plain. Cheap-looking even though it wasn't actually cheap. It was the kind of outfit someone wore when they didn't want to be noticed, or worse, when they wanted others to look down on the person wearing it. Emily picked it up with 2 fingers. She slipped it on because resistance wasn't part of the role. She was playing. Not yet. By the time she reached the Rhodes mansion, the place buzzed with energy. Staff hurried in and floral arrangements were carried through the halls. Judith barked orders like a commander, preparing for war. Emily stepped inside quietly. No one greeted her. Judith finally spotted her near the staircase. About time, she said sharply. We have things to discuss. Emily nodded once. Of course. Judith led her to a small, empty room near the back of the house. She shut the door behind them slowly, deliberately. Then she turned to Emily with a smile so cold it felt like ice pressed against skin. I want complete honesty from you today, Judith said, folding her arms. All right, Emily replied. Judith looked her up and down. Do you think we're stupid? Emily blinked. I'm not sure what you mean. Judith stepped closer. Your past, your family, your money. Did you really think you could hide all of that from us forever? Emily stayed still. Her heartbeat didn't change, but the air inside the room tightened. Judith crossed her arms. We know you weren't poor. Not really. Emily didn't answer. Judith continued. Your father? We know he has money. Old money. Generational. But we also know he cut you off. Emily kept her breathing even. Judith smirked. Bad behavior, wasn't it? That's what people say. That you were spoiled, wild, out of control. Your father got tired of cleaning up your messes, so he threw you out. Emily didn't react. Judith leaned in, lowering her voice even more. That's why you're here. That's why you cling to Michael. You need stability. You need a lifeline. You need us. Emily felt a slow heat in her chest. Not anger, but a cold recognition. They had pieces of her story, twisted, distorted, rearranged to fit the picture they wanted. Who told you that? Emily asked softly. Judith smiled. Does it matter? It did. But Emily wasn't going to feed into it. Judith tapped her cheek like she was talking to a child. Look, you can still make this work. People like you cling. People like you don't get many chances. But you keep quiet tonight, you smile when you're supposed to, and you let Michael have his moment. What moment? Emily asked. Judith stepped back, adjusting the sleeve of her blazer. You'll see. Then Judith opened the door and walked out, leaving Emily standing in the small, dim room. For the first time since she stepped into their world, Emily felt something crack. Not her strength, but her belief that she could predict every move they would make. Because someone, Rachel, had clearly found parts of her life, and someone else had twisted them. Maybe multiple people. Rachel must have been bragging about her discoveries, feeding Judith, feeding the others. Rachel thought she understood Emily's past. She didn't, but the fact that Rachel came close at all meant someone was helping her dig. Emily left the room slowly, walking through the corridor with careful steps. The noise of preparation swelled around her. Voices, footsteps, clinking glasses. But none of it reached her. She rounded a corner and nearly ran into Rachel. Oh, Rachel said, her bright smile snapping into place like a switch. I was just looking for you. Emily looked her in the eyes. Were you? Rachel's smile tightened. We need to talk about your hair. It looks too natural. Let me fix it. Emily didn't move. Rachel grabbed her elbow lightly, guiding her toward the stairs. Also, by the way, you might want to be careful tonight. People talk. And you know how this family works. Emily stopped walking. Rachel paused with her. What exactly did you tell your mother about me? Emily asked. Rachel blinked innocently. Me? Nothing. Nothing important. Just things I heard. From who? Rachel shrugged. Friends. People online. Little things. Emily studied her face. The slight tremble in Rachel's smile. The way her eyes darted away too. Quickly, the nervous tap of her finger against the banister. Rachel had dug. But someone else had handed her the shovel. You're lying, Emily said calmly. Rachel's jaw tightened. Watch your tone. You think you're so quiet and polite, but I see you. You're hiding something. And if I find it first, don't blame me for what happens. Emily didn't blink. Rachel leaned closer. And just so you know, tonight is going to be memorable. She slipped past her with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Emily watched her walk away, heels clicking on the polished floor. Every person in this family wanted something from her. Some wanted power. Some wanted control. Some wanted destruction. None of them wanted her. They wanted the version of her they had created. Emily made her way upstairs to the guest room Judith designated for her to prepare. It was plain, empty, barely furnished. A temporary space just like the role they wanted her to play. She sat down on the edge of the bed, letting everything settle like dust around her. Her father, her past, her money, the twisted story they believed. Rachel was the leak, but someone else was the source. And somewhere inside this house, another set of eyes was watching her. Someone who had sent that secret warning. Someone who knew more than they should. Someone who said, their secrets are uglier than yours. Who? And what did they want? She didn't have answers yet. But she had time. Hours later, The gala preparations reached their peak. The mansion transformed into a glittering display of wealth. Servers hurried with silver trays. Guests in shimmering clothing arrived one by one, filling the halls with laughter and polished greetings. Emily walked downstairs slowly, blending into the noise. People barely looked at her as she passed. Some gave her small nods. Others looked at her with curiosity, some with mild pity. Michael found her near the bottom of the stairs. He looked polished, confident, glowing with the attention of important people. "Finally," he said, taking her hand without warmth. "Come on. I need you next to me for photos." Emily followed him. His grip was firm, almost too tight, as if he were afraid she might run away. He didn't notice her silence. He never did. After photos, after introductions, after forced smiles and stiff poses, Emily slipped away to catch her breath. She stood near a tall window, letting the cool glass press against her palm. Then someone cleared their throat behind her. She turned. Thomas, Michael's cousin. He was older than Michael by a few years, quieter, more observant. She'd seen him at gatherings before, always standing back, watching people instead of talking to them. Tonight, he looked more serious than usual. "Emily," he said in a low voice, "we need to talk." Emily stayed still. "About what?" He looked around to make sure no one was listening, then stepped closer. "You got a message. An anonymous one." Emily didn't react. "You want to know who sent it?" Thomas said. She met his eyes, calm, waiting. "I did," he said. Emily's fingers tightened slightly against the window ledge. "Why?" she asked softly. Thomas didn't answer her right away. He just watched her, eyes sharp in a way that told her he was measuring every breath she took. Finally, he said, "You needed to know what was coming." Emily folded her arms loosely. "And what's coming?" Thomas glanced at the ballroom doors, at the clusters of guests, at the staff adjusting lights for Michael's big moment. Then he lowered his voice. "Michael's not just planning to embarrass you," he said. "He's preparing something bigger. Something he thinks will guarantee you never stand in his way again." Emily kept her expression still. "I already know about the speech." "This isn't about the speech," Thomas said. "It's about the video." Emily frowned. "What video?" Thomas looked at her, steady and direct. He had someone put together a clip. Photos, messages, records, things he thinks will prove you're a liar. A gold digger. A woman pretending to be poor to trap him. Emily didn't move, but inside, everything went quiet. Thomas continued. "He's going to play it in front of everyone. Investors, partners, friends, the entire room." Emily's voice stayed soft. "Why are you telling me this?" Thomas's jaw tightened. "Because I don't care about you. I care about what happens to him after this." There it was. The truth. Sharp and bare. Emily didn't flinch. "Explain," she said. Thomas stepped closer, lowering his voice even more. "Michael is being groomed to take a leadership role in the company. My role. But he's reckless, selfish, stupid. If he embarrasses you tonight, publicly, cruelly, it will ruin him. People will talk. Investors will question his character. My uncle will lose faith in him." Emily stared at him. "So you're warning me because you want him to fall?" "Yes," Thomas said without hesitation. "I want him to fail. I want him off track. I want him out of the way. And you think humiliating me helps you?" Thomas pressed his lips together. "I think tonight will be chaotic, and chaos is good for me." "So you're not helping me," Emily said quietly. "You're using me." Thomas didn't deny it. He looked her right in the eyes and said, "Everyone in this family is using you." Emily's heart thumped once. Heavy. Not fast, heavy. Thomas added, "Don't expect loyalty from anyone here. Not Michael. Not Judith. not Rachel, and not me. Emily didn't know what reaction he expected. Fear? Gratitude? Anger? But her face stayed calm. Thomas watched her for another moment. Michael will call you on stage in a few minutes. When he does, be ready. For what? She asked. For everything. Before she could respond, he turned and disappeared into the crowd, blending into the guests, like he'd never spoken to her at all. Emily stood alone near the window, the noise of the gala swirling behind her. Laughter, clinking, glasses, music warming up, the Rhodes family moving from one guest to another, pretending. They weren't preparing for something ugly. She understood it now. Every person in that house had a motive. Judith wanted control. Rachel wanted validation. Thomas wanted Michael to fall. Michael wanted entertainment and dominance. Emily was the tool they all thought they could use for their own ends. But they didn't know who she was. They didn't know what she could do. And they had no idea what was coming. The lights dimmed suddenly. A hush fell across the room. Servers stepped back. Guests turned toward the stage. Judith beamed with pride. Rachel straightened her dress smugly. Thomas stood near the back, arms crossed, watching everything, like a man studying a match he had just lit. Michael walked onto the stage, microphone in hand. The room applauded. Emily stayed where she was, not hiding, not moving, just existing in their blind spot. Michael smiled at the crowd, soaking in the attention. Thank you all for being here tonight, he said. This gala is special, not just for our family business, but for my future. People murmured in approval. Judith dabbed her eyes as if this were deeply emotional. Rachel shot Emily a pointed look. Emily didn't react. Michael continued, As you know, tonight is also a celebration of my engagement to Emily. Guests clapped again. Michael paused, pretending to be touched. She's been such a blessing, he said, voice syrupy. A reminder that love can be found in the unlikeliest places. People chuckled softly. Michael smiled wider. In fact, I'd love to share something with all of you. Something that shows exactly where she came from and how far she's come. Emily's stomach didn't drop. It hardened. Michael gestured to the ceiling. Bring down the screen. The crowd shifted, excited, curious, hungry for entertainment. Emily watched it unfold in slow motion. A large white screen descended behind him. The projector warmed up. Judith clasped her, hands together. Rachel whispered something to a cousin and giggled. Thomas stared straight, ahead, waiting for the explosion. Michael smoothed his suit jacket and looked straight into the crowd. Tonight, he said proudly, I want to show you who she really is. A ripple moved through the room. Judith's smile widened. Rachel leaned forward eagerly. Emily breathed once, steady and slow. Michael raised his hand like he was conducting an orchestra. And then he said it. Let me show you who she really is. The room went silent. The projector flickered on. A video began to play. The moment the first frame flickered onto the screen, Emily watched the entire room lean forward, curious, expectant, hungry for humiliation. They waited for a video that would tear her apart. But Emily didn't flinch. She knew exactly what was about to happen, because she had changed everything. Hours earlier, while the Rhodes family obsessed over flower arrangements and lighting cues, Emily walked through the back corridor where staff prepared equipment. Most ignored her. They'd learned the Rhodes didn't care what she did as long as she stayed out of the way. But one man noticed her. A quiet servant named Lucas, barely older than her. Kind eyes. The same server who had handed her water the very first night she met the family. Emily had stopped him gently. Is the projector ready? He looked around before answering. Almost. Mr. Rhodes wants to test the video soon. Can you help me? Emily asked. Just one thing. Lucas hesitated. If they find out. They won't, Emily said. And if they do, trust me, they'll be too busy looking at each other to blame you. Something in her tone, calm, steady, certain, made him nod. Emily handed him a small flash drive. Replace the file Michael gave you with this one. Nothing else. Lucas swallowed hard. Is it safe? For you? Yes. For them. She let a small smile slip. No. Lucas tucked the drive into his pocket. I'll do it. And now, in the packed ballroom, with Judith's smile sharp as a blade and Michael ready to bask. In the spotlight, Emily stood still as truth prepared to detonate. The lights dimmed further. The room went silent. The video started. It wasn't Emily's past. It wasn't poverty. It wasn't shame. It was a dimly lit recording, grainy, but clear. Judith's voice filled the room first. Make sure she stays in her place. Girls like her need to be reminded. A gasp rippled through the guests. Judith's eyes widened. What is that? Another clip rolled immediately. This time Rachel's voice, bright and cruel. She'll cry for sure. Humiliating her is the only fun part of this whole event. Rachel froze, color draining from her face. People turned and looked directly at her. Before she could speak, the next clip replaced her. Michael. His voice, unmistakable. I'll call her my charity case. Everyone will laugh. It'll be perfect. The room erupted, shock, whispers, confused murmurs. Judith shot to her feet. Turn that off. Right now. But the video kept playing. Another clip. Thomas's voice. Calm. Calculated. Let him embarrass her. It'll make him look unstable. I need him to fail. Thomas didn't move. His jaw locked. His posture stayed still, but his eyes gave him away. Fear, flickering fast. Judith turned toward him in disbelief. You did this? You plotted against your own blood. But before she could get an answer, the next clip rolled. Michael again. This time whispering. She won't find out about the affair. She's too clueless. I'll end things after the wedding. Gasp spread again. Louder. Sharper. More violent. Judith covered her mouth. Rachel stepped back. Guests whispered into each other's ears. Investors leaned forward. Emily felt none of it. She watched from the sidelines. Calm. Silent. In control. But the worst part of the video hadn't played yet. The screen flashed to black. Then audio filled the ballroom. A woman's voice. Breathy. Soft. Laughing. Michael. You really think she has no idea? Michael's face went from shock to horror. Someone in the crowd whispered, That's the colleague he brings to the conferences. Another said, He's been cheating for months? Another, I can't believe this. Judith stumbled into her chair. Rachel covered her face. Thomas looked away. The audio continued. Michael's voice, playful and cruel. She's nothing. Placeholder. A quiet little project for me and my family. Another breathy laugh from the woman. And after the wedding? Michael, I'll divorce her. She gets nothing with that prenup. It'll be easy. The room tipped into chaos. Judith shouted over the noise. Turn it off. Turn it off. Now. But the staff didn't move. They were frozen, watching the family they served unravel. Emily finally stepped forward. Quietly. The screen shut down on its own. Lucas keeping his promise, ending the file exactly where she told him to. The room went dark. Then the lights rose just a little, illuminating Emily from the side. For the first time in weeks, people actually looked at her. Not with mockery. Not with pity. With fear. She stepped toward the stage, heels silent on the glossy floor. Michael was shaking. What did you? Emily reached the foot of the stage. Michael stepped back. Rachel looked sick. Judith stared as if she were seeing Emily for the first time. Emily took the microphone from Michael's trembling hands. He didn't stop her. No one did. And then she spoke. Her voice soft, controlled. the voice of a woman who had been quiet long enough. Let me tell you who I really am. The room stilled. Every person leaned in. Silence spread across the ballroom like a wave. My name is Emily Carter, she said. Daughter of James Carter. Gasps circled the room. Investors shifted. Eyes widened. Judith froze completely. Michael blinked. Your father. Emily nodded. Yes, the James Carter. The one whose company is worth more than your entire family's assets combined. People murmured violently now. Recognition, disbelief, whispers turning into shock. Emily continued, calm as ever. I wasn't cut off. I wasn't cast out. I left by choice. I left because I didn't want to live under cameras and headlines. And when I met Michael, I thought maybe I could build a quiet life. Michael swallowed hard. You lied to me. No, Emily said. I let you underestimate me. Gasps again. She turned slightly toward the crowd. While you all mocked me, judged me, dismissed me, kept my silence. I wanted to see who you were when you thought I had nothing. Judith rose shakily. You were pretending to be poor? Emily held her gaze. No, I was pretending to be what you wanted me to be. Small. Judith's mouth trembled. Rachel stepped back, gripping a chair to steady herself. Thomas stared at the floor. Emily continued, her voice clean and steady. And since we're being honest, I should mention one more thing. She let the room still again. I own shares in the Rhodes Company. Judith's knees buckled. She caught herself on the table. Investors turned to one another in shock. Michael looked like the floor had dropped out beneath him. What are you talking about? How? My father, Emily said simply. He bought them for me years ago, told me to keep them quiet, until I needed them. She scanned the room slowly. The Rhodes family didn't blink. Every one of them held their breath. Tonight, Emily said, is the night I needed them. Before anyone could speak, she stepped back slightly, letting her next words hit clean. And I'm divorcing Michael. A collective gasp filled the hall. Michael's voice cracked. No, Emily, please. She held up one hand, silencing him. And since the prenup I signed gives me everything I brought into the marriage, she said. And since you insisted you owned all assets before I arrived, you leave with nothing. Michael's face collapsed. Judith sank into her chair. Rachel pressed her shaking hands to her mouth. Emily remained calm, still, untouchable. She wasn't done. Far from it. Emily stood in the center of the ballroom, the microphone still in her hand, the Rhodes family, trembling around her like pieces of glass ready to crack. She wasn't finished. Not yet. She turned her eyes to Rachel, who looked like she wanted to melt into the floor. You, Emily said quietly, have been very busy. Rachel shook her head fast. I didn't. You dug into my past, Emily continued. You twisted what you didn't understand. You fed lies to your mother. You fed lies to Michael. And you thought I wouldn't notice. Rachel's throat bobbed as she swallowed hard. I was trying to protect my family. Emily held her gaze. No, you were trying to feel powerful. Judith shot her daughter a sharp look. You told me she was disowned. You said she was kicked out. Rachel paled. I heard things I thought people told me. Emily didn't blink. You heard what someone wanted you to hear, and you passed it along. Without thinking. That's the problem with people who rely on gossip. They never notice when they're being used. Rachel looked around desperately. No one moved to defend her. Emily then shifted her attention to Thomas. He didn't look shaken. He looked exposed. Thomas, she said, you warned me, but not to help me. Thomas didn't deny it. He kept his voice steady. I wanted him to fall. That's true. Esther, an aunt standing nearby, gasped softly. Another relative muttered, I knew it. I knew that. Boy was trouble. Judith snapped. You would sabotage your own cousin? Thomas raised his chin. Michael isn't ready to lead anything. Everything he touches, he ruins. The company deserves better. Emily studied him. And you thought using me would get you there. It was strategy, Thomas said simply. Emily nodded. Then accept the consequence. She turned to the crowd. Thomas knew about the humiliation. He encouraged it. He wanted this family's future heir to fall in public. And tonight, he succeeded. The room erupted. Voices rose. Accusations flew. Judith shouted something about betrayal. Another relative yelled. Thomas about loyalty. Someone near the back shouted, This family is a disaster. Thomas didn't move, but his eyes hardened. He understood she had cut the final string he was balancing on. Emily let the noise swell. Let it shake the walls. Let it expose everything they had tried to hide. Under gold and marble. Then she lifted the microphone again. Before I leave, she said, there is one more truth I want to share. The crowd slowly quieted. Michael stared at her with hollow eyes, shaking his head, silently begging. Emily looked at him one last time. Calm, cold, done. Michael, she said, you called me your charity case. He flinched. You said you lifted me up. He dropped his gaze. You convinced yourself that you were the prize. Emily paused. But the truth is simple. You were the lesson. A hush settled, sharp and deep. Michael looked like the words struck him harder than anything in the video. Emily continued, her voice steady. You mocked me. You lied to me. You cheated on me. And tonight you tried to destroy me. Judith covered her mouth again. Rachel squeezed her eyes shut. Thomas looked away. But you only destroyed yourselves, Emily added. She let that sit. The truth in it pulsed through the room. Emily finally lowered the microphone and handed it to a stunned staff member. Michael reached toward her as if begging for one more chance to explain. She stepped back. No, she said. Just one word. Final. Whole. She turned her back on all of them. That was when another voice suddenly pierced the tension. Michael! A woman stormed forward from the crowd. Beautiful, furious, shaking. His affair partner. She slapped him hard across the face. The sound echoed like a gunshot. You told me she didn't matter, she shouted. You said you were leaving her. Michael stumbled, clutching his cheek, stammering. Wait. Please, just listen. She shoved him. Hard. Don't talk to me again. Guests watched in stunned silence as she stormed out, heels clicking angrily across the floor. The Rhodes family looked shattered. Judith sat heavily in a chair, eyes wild, repeating under her breath. This can't be happening. This can't be happening. Rachel cried quietly, makeup streaking down her cheeks. Thomas slipped away from the group, knowing the family would deal with him after tonight. Emily didn't stay to watch their implosion. She walked toward the exit slowly, her steps steady and light, as if she had shed a weight she had carried for years. People parted for her without being asked. No one tried to stop her. No one dared. At the door, she paused and looked back once. Not at them, but at the chandelier. The one she'd sat under so many times while they whispered, judged, mocked. It glittered now in a hall full of broken pride. Fitting. She walked outside into the cool night air. Lucas, the quiet servant, stood near the side entrance, waiting. When she approached, he nodded once. It worked, he said softly. It did, she replied. Are you okay? She gave him a small, real smile. I'm perfect. He nodded again. If you ever need anything, any help. I know, she said, and she meant it. Lucas stepped back respectfully, letting her pass. Emily walked down the long driveway past the luxury cars, past the trimmed hedges, past the life that never actually owned her. Behind her, the Rhodes mansion filled with shouting, crying, blaming, collapsing. Ahead of her, the night stretched open and free. She didn't hurry. She didn't look back. She didn't need to, because the truth was simple, clean, and final. Power is not always loud. Sometimes it waits, watches, and chooses the perfect moment to speak. And the people who mistake silence for weakness are always the first to choke on the truth.